The Supreme Court struck down the tariffs. That's the headline. Say it in a room full of importers and you'll see relief. But pull up the actual customs data and something strange shows up. The average tariff rate on Chinese goods barely moved. In February this year, the court ruled the president's biggest tariff tool was illegal. By July, the effective rate on Chinese imports was still sitting around 30%. Same bill, different legal paperwork. So if the tariffs got struck down, why is your invoice still the same? That's what we're actually digging into today. Let's get the timeline straight, because this is where most coverage stops paying attention. The US-China trade war started back in 2018 with tariffs of 10 to 25% on select goods. That was Trade War 1. Then in 2025, things escalated fast. By April, reciprocal tariffs on China hit an average of 127%. Some product categories touched 145%. That's not a typo. That's the highest tariff wall the US has built in over 100 years. A truce in Geneva pulled that number down to 52% by May. Still historic, still expensive. And then this year, the legal ground shifted under the whole system. On February 20th, 2026, the Supreme Court ruled that the law the administration had been using, called PIIE, never actually gave the president the power to set tariffs in the first place. 6-3 ruling, the broadest tariff tool in the arsenal, gone. Here's the part almost nobody covered properly. The same day the ruling landed, the administration signed a new tariff under a different law, Section 122, at 10%, and two other tools that were never touched by the court case, Section 301 and Section 232, kept running exactly as before. Section 301 alone still applies rates up to 100% on things like electric vehicles and 25 to 50% on batteries and solar components. Stake those layers together, and by May 2026, the blended effective tariff on Chinese goods was sitting around 33 to 35%, according to tracking from the Peterson Institute. Compare that to a customs data reading from Yale that put the broader effective China rate at 29.6% in February, up from just 10.9% across all of 2024. Either way you slice it, the number barely flinched after the court ruling. And in July, USTR added another layer entirely, a 12.5% tariff tied to a forced labor investigation. The tower keeps getting new floors, even as the foundation gets legally challenged. To understand why this year feels so different from 2018, you have to compare the two trade wars side by side, because they don't look anything alike. Trade War 1 was loud, farmers got bailout checks, soybean tariffs made front page news, markets swung on every tweet. The average tariff back then topped out around 25%, and the whole country was watching it happen in real time. This version is quieter but heavier. The rate is higher, the legal machinery is more complex, and most of it is happening inside customs codes and court filings instead of press conferences. Yale's budget lab has been tracking the price impact almost monthly this year, and their numbers show something telling. Back in February, they modeled a household cost of around $600 to $800 a year if the tariffs expired on schedule, or up to $1,300 if made permanent. By April, with more tariff layers added, that range had shifted to $760 to as much as $3,400, depending on what gets extended. The other major difference is where the pressure lands. In 2018, workarounds barely existed yet. In 2026, they're fully built out. Academic researchers tracking trade data found that over $8 billion of Chinese exports were rerouted through Vietnam to the US in just the first 3 quarters of 2025 alone, reversing a 2-year decline in that kind of activity. Harvard research on the earlier trade war found that roughly 9% of Vietnam's export growth to the US was pure rerouting, disguised Chinese goods getting relabeled along the way. while the other 40% reflected businesses genuinely relocating production. So the comparison isn't just old tariffs versus new tariffs. It's a slow, visible trade war versus a fast, technical one, where the workarounds are now a mature industry of their own. Here's the part that actually explains why the price on your receipt hasn't moved even though the legal story keeps changing. Tariffs are not one tax. They're layers, and layers stack. A single product coming from China can carry the base import rate plus a Section 301 duty from the original 2018 investigation plus a Section 122 surcharge from this year plus, in some cases, a Section 232 tariff if it contains steel or aluminum. When the Supreme Court struck down IEEPA, it only removed one of those layers. The others were built on completely different legal foundations, so they kept collecting revenue the entire time uninterrupted. That's the mechanism behind the headline confusion. A court can strike down a law, and CBP still has to keep collecting duties under the surviving ones until someone actively rewrites the paperwork. The refunds are happening for the specific IEEPA portion, but analysts tracking this are blunt about where that money goes. It goes back to the importer, the business that originally paid it. It does not flow back down to the consumer who already paid the marked up shelf price. As one analyst put it, once inflation from a price increase settles in, companies don't reverse it just because the tax that caused it became illegal. Meanwhile, on the other side of the mechanism, China isn't absorbing this quietly either. Its economy is splitting in two. Domestic retail and property are weak. GDP growth slowed to 4.3% in the second quarter, the softest pace in 3.5 years. But its export engine, specifically the sectors most targeted by these tariffs, is doing the opposite. Semiconductor exports roughly doubled in the first half of this year. Electric vehicle exports jumped around 70%. The tariff pressure didn't shrink China's tech sector. It appears to have accelerated the exact self-sufficiency push Beijing's newest 5-year plan was already targeting. So where does this actually go from here? There are 3 realistic paths, and each one is already visible in the data we've covered. The first path is stabilization at a high floor. If Section 122 expires on schedule in late 2026 and nothing replaces it, Yale's modeling suggests the household cost settles closer to the lower end, around $700 to $900 a year, still historically elevated but not climbing further. Section 301 and 232 don't disappear in this scenario, they just stop growing. The second path is escalation through new investigations. USTR already opened a fresh Section 301 case in March targeting what it calls excess capacity, and the forced labor tariff added in July shows the administration is comfortable using narrower, sector-specific tools to keep adding layers even without the broad IEEPA authority. If that pattern continues, Yale's modeling puts the household burden closer to $1,300 to $3,400 a year, and that range would land hardest on apparel, footwear, electronics, and vehicles, the categories already showing the steepest short-run price increases. The third path runs through the rerouting economy itself. If enforcement actually catches up to the $8 billion a year in disguised transshipment through Vietnam and similar routes, prices on rerouted goods could rise as loopholes close. If enforcement stays where it is, expect Vietnam and Mexico's role as pass-through economies to keep growing, which softens the immediate price hit for consumers but leaves the underlying trade imbalance unresolved. What's clear across all 3 paths is that the legal fight over tariffs and the price you actually pay have become 2 separate stories. Courts can keep ruling on presidential authority. Section 301 and 232 will keep collecting regardless, because Congress, not the courts, would need to act to remove those. That's the mechanism to watch, not the next headline about a ruling. So the trade war didn't end when the headlines moved on, it just stopped being loud. The tariffs got rebuilt on sturdier legal ground, the rerouting economy matured into something semi-permanent, and China leaned harder into the exact tech sectors this was supposed to slow down. None of that shows up as a dramatic news event. it shows up as 33% stacked into the price of something you buy without a second thought. Have you noticed prices creeping up on electronics, clothing, or appliances this year, even with all this resolved in the courts? Tell me what you're seeing where you live. If this kind of deep dive is useful to you, subscribe. There's more of this coming. See you in the next one.